Okay guys, welcome to lesson 7 of factorization. So we've done type 1, which is common factor, type 2 dots, difference of two squares. We're now going to look at the third type of factorization, which is called trinomials. The word tri means three, like think of a tricycle. So let's have a look at a couple of these sums quickly. So we'll start with an example, and then after that we're going to then work through a couple of sums. So if we have a look at this particular example, we've got x squared plus 5x minus 6. So the first concept that I just want to explain to you guys is that you've got, in terms of a format or identifying trinomials are in the format of ax squared plus bx plus c. Now a, b and c, all that a means, a is the coefficient or the number that comes in front of the x squared. So for grade 9, when we do factorization, generally you're going to end up with a 1 in front over here. Sometimes they might ask a specific sum, and you'll see when you do number 4 that you might have a 2 there, but that generally means you first have to factorize using common factor factorization. So for grade 9 level, there'll always be a 1 over there. And then the coefficient of x is called b, and then c is basically your constant term over here. So it's important just to recognize what is a, what is b, and what is c. So let's have a look at this particular example and how we go about finding the solution. So the method there's various methods of doing trinomials. The method that I prefer, that I'm going to show you guys, is where you take a multiplied by c and b, and you actually need to just work that out. So in this case, a is always 1 times c, so your answer over here is always going to be c. But the reason I like using this method is because once you get to grade 10 and beyond, then this method is very useful. So you've got here, you've got a negative 6 over there, and then b in this case is positive 5, right? So it's 1 times negative 6 is negative 6, and then you've got a positive 5 there. So something multiplied by something must give me negative 6, but when I add it up, it must give me positive 5. So you have to find out, okay, what are the factors that will get me to negative 6, but when I add it up, it will give me positive 5. Now here what's very important is the sign. So there's a negative there, which means that it's a positive times a negative, which must give me that answer, but when I add it up, it must give me positive 5. So in this case, what could possibly work could be negative 3 and negative 2, but that's not going to work because it doesn't get me to positive 5, so I can't use those factors. So what will work in this case is 6 and 1. So just in terms of the process, you can write that down first, and then you need to decide what needs to be positive and what needs to be negative, because it's a positive times a negative that gives me a negative. So in this case, it's going to be the negative 1 there, because when I multiply it out, I get to negative 6, but when I add it up, I get to positive 5. So the way I'm going to do the solution now is going to be, now that I found my factors, I'm going to have two brackets, and I'm going to have x and x. And then I found my factors, which is positive 6, so the positive 6 goes over there, and the negative 1 goes over there. So it's as straightforward as that. Because when you multiply this out now, you'll see that you get to x squared, that is negative 6, but when you multiply the middle terms, it's going to be negative 1x plus 6x, which will give me positive 5x. Right. So what we're going to do quickly is we're going to give you 5 sums to do, and then after those 5 sums, we're going to mark it in this particular video. Okay, so you've got your 5 sums. If you can please write that down. You just need 1 line space by each one, except for number 4, where you would need 2 lines. So my tip for you for number 4 is you're going to take out your highest common factor first as a step before you follow the next step. Okay, so we'll have a look quickly. Number 1, at the answers, you've got x squared minus 6x plus 9. So we said we're going to, one of the options you have is that you can just write down the x and x along, and then over here we're going to do our calculations. So we said it's a multiplied by c and b. So we've got a multiplied by c, so it's 1 multiplied by 9, so that gives us 9. And then I've got the negative 6 in the middle there. So something times something must give me positive 9, but when I add it up it must give me negative 6. So in this case, because I've got a positive there, both of these numbers, which is going to be 3 and 3, must either be positive or both of them must be negative. But because I must have negative 6, when I add up these numbers, if I make it positive, I'm not going to get to negative 6. But if I make both numbers negative, it means negative 3 plus negative 3, that becomes negative 3. So minus 3 gives me negative 6. And if I say negative 3 multiplied by negative 3, I get to positive 9. In other words, when I multiply it out, I get to that, and when I add it up, I get to that. So in this case, my factors is going to be negative 3 and negative 3. So that's the answer for number 1. Number 2. A squared plus 2ab plus b squared. The only difference with this one is there's a squared there and a b squared there. So just in terms of the structure of your answer, the only difference is going to be you're going to have a and a b. A and a b. That's the only difference. And then we have to find our factors now. So remember, our strategy is a times c and b. So in this case, a multiplied by c, it's 1 times 1, which is just 1. And b is 2. So something times something must give me 1. When I add it up, it must give me 2. So in this case, it will be 1 multiplied by 1 equals 1. And 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So this is fairly straightforward. It's just a plus. I don't have to write the 1 there. Plus, I don't have to write the 1 there. Number 3. P squared plus 2p plus 1. In this case, you'll find if you follow the same procedures, you're going to end up with p plus 1, p plus 1. So that's your answer over there. Right? Okay. Number 4. You've got number 4 is you've got 2x cubed, 2x squared, sorry, 2x squared minus 4xy plus 2y squared. So in this case here, we said you first need to take out your highest common factor, which is 2, and you're left with x squared minus 2xy plus y squared. So then we can work with a trinomial over here. We've got 2, there's an x over there, and another x over there. So I've got a times c and b. 1 times 1 is 1. I've got a negative 2 over here. So the only difference now, it's going to be negative 1 multiplied by negative 1 is equal to positive 1. But if I add it up, it will give me negative 2. So it's minus 1 and minus 1. Okay. Number 5, it's the last one we're going to have a look at for this exercise. Number 5, I've got x squared minus 8x plus 16. So in this case over here, it's x and x. 1 times 16 is 16. Then I've got a negative 8 in the middle. So something times something must give me negative 16 when I add it up. In this case, it's going to be negative 4 and negative 4. Okay. Thanks for listening. In the next exercise, we're going to look at another type of factorization called grouping.